Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is known for a lot of things in the gaming community, but one that has always confounded me was the disconnect between a character's viability and their popularity. In competitive titles, the majority of players vying for the top are drawn to whichever choices net the most results or the least amount of effort required. That's how metas are formed. Generally speaking, strong characters or those with a very high skill ceiling are more popular for their pragmatic incentives, while weaker ones are neglected due to their poor effectiveness. Though for some reason, Smash Ultimate has a good number of fighters who are unanimously rated very highly on tier lists and evaluations, yet see less representation than mid or even low tier units, which goes against the prevailing wisdom that the better the option, the more likely people will go for it, and one of those characters in particular is Joker, Ultimate's first legitimate DLC character since Piranha Plant was free for early purchases of the game. Widely considered top 5 by pro and amateurs alike, perhaps even top 3, Joker's maiden voyage quickly showcased just how dangerous of an opponent he could be in the hands of a skilled player, with MKLeo and Zachary, two of the world's best, displaying the extent of his capabilities. Following the worldwide suspension of in-person tournaments though, his presence has gradually diminished. There still are a good number of people fielding him, but it's safe to say that he's lost a lot of front page exposure compared to back in 2019. So today, let's find out exactly what happened to Joker and why people have stopped playing him. Quick disclaimer, if this is your first time on my channel, to all Joker mains out there, this is not a personal attack. I'm not here to bash on you or your main, rather the goal of this series is to analyze why some characters are less popular than others, whether it has something to do with their actual performative metrics or playstyle quirks, and to hopefully give more exposure to them so that some of you might give them a try. But with that said, let's get started. As part of the beloved Persona franchise, specifically the critically acclaimed Persona 5, one of the most anticipated DLC characters requested by the community was Joker and his iconic persona Arsene. To no one's surprise, his inclusion to the game set a very striking precedent for things to come, and everyone was excited to see what kind of moveset he would have in light of the vast array of attacks in his game of origin. More pressing, of course, was how Arsene's power would translate to a game like Smash, and suffice to say, both of them made quite an impression. Joker was blessed with arguably one of the best combinations of attributes a fighter can ask for. Fast mobility both on the ground and the air, fast falling speed, gravity, and air acceleration, as well as average weight and a very thin hurtbox frame, which would get even thinner with his various animations. Additionally, he was given a moveset specializing in close quarters combat, boasting fast attacks across the board that featured a firm balance of speed and power. From these elements alone, it's clear he had a lot of potential. Most characters that are rated very poorly on tier lists tend to lag behind in physics, frame data, and/or range, so in the case of Joker, he had a fantastic balance of all three, with many of his attacks possessing sufficient enough range to almost qualify as fully disjointed moves. It's rare to find rushdown characters that also have good effective range, since with the exception of Roy and Mithra, the bigger your hitboxes are, the slower your movement or attack speed will be, as evident by Sephiroth or Byleth. He's one of the few characters in the game who doesn't really have any useless attacks. His normals on the ground and the air are both spectacular, and his unique arsenal of special attacks allows him to deal with a lot of scenarios and matchups by virtue of its sheer versatility. On top of that, his throws can very easily lead into low and mid percentage combos, sometimes outright kills in the right circumstances. Honestly, I could go on and on about his wide resume of strengths, but obviously the one that makes him shine the most is of course his trusty persona. As mentioned earlier, the faster a character is, the less threatening their individual moves are in an effort to keep things balanced. It would be pretty incongruous for someone with the mobility of Fox or Captain Falcon to blast you off the face of the map with 5 hits the way Ganondorf or Bowser can. And though combo-heavy rushdown fighters do have hard hitters, they tend to only be usable through setups or reads. Seldom do you ever see them throwing out smash attacks in the neutral, especially when you take into account most of them having light weight, thus leaving them wide open for a heavy punish in return. That's how Smash has been ever since its conception. The faster you were, the more effort you had to put into closing out stocks. At least, that was until Joker came out. It's true that he adheres to the power and speed rule on his own, but with this persona in play, that all changes. Nested within himself is the Rebellion gauge, which fills up over time or when he takes damage. Once completely filled, for up to a maximum of 30 seconds, he summons Arsene, who attacks in tandem with Joker by echoing the latter's attacks. While active, Arsene considerably powers up every single attack in Joker's kit with the exception of grabs and throws. They all deal more damage, which consequently means more safety on shield, have noticeably higher kill power, and even gain increased range or additional hitboxes depending on the move. To give you an example of just how much Arsene amplifies Joker's pressure, let's take a look at a few attacks. Without his persona, Joker's back air does 9 damage and KOs middleweights at around 120 to 130% near the ledge. But with Arsene, the damage goes up to 16, almost double, and the increased base knockback allows him to kill you at 80% near the ledge. That's stronger than some smash attacks on an attack that comes out at frame 7. And then there's forward smash. At base, it does 14% and kills at around 80% at the ledge. With Arsene, it goes up to 22% and can kill as low as 55%. putting it on par with Marth and Roy's sweet spot of forward smashes. Essentially, Joker can temporarily grant all of his attacks significantly more pressure, addressing the single most challenging obstacle that plagues all rushdown combo fighters. It's almost like Mithras attacks temporarily gaining Pyre's damage, knockback, and range. While his opponents can accelerate the depletion of Joker's rebel gauge, one successful neutral exchange is all it takes for him to close out your stock. It's debatably the most powerful comeback mechanic in all of Smash, just with the sheer power boost it gives in almost every aspect of his kit. People frequently joke about how Joker is Sheik who can hit as hard as Ganondorf. That analogy rings true in many cases. Okay, I've just spent the past 5 minutes or so explaining merely a fraction of how good Joker is as a character. He's fast, nimble, versatile, and has just enough of everything to handle everyone else. That alone would be sufficient enough to put him in contention for high tier, but the existence of Arsene all but cements his position as one of Smash Ultimate's most threatening fighters to this day. But if that's the case, what's going on with his presence in the competitive scene? Leo has effectively halted all usage of him now that he's introduced Core into his lineup. Zachary still fields him every now and then, but not exclusively. That, and as of making this video, his attendance at major events has been few and far between. And even Nido Sharp retired Joker in favor of Zero Suit Samus. Much of his declining popularity has to do with circumstance more than anything else. When the Wi-Fi meta took over during 2020 and 2021, it highlighted just how disorienting an extra 5 to 8 frames or so of input delay would cause for players. And for characters like Joker who rely on precise spacing, timing, and execution of his combos, even a mere 5 extra frames of input delay can severely hinder a player's ability to pilot him, as he's mostly reaction focused alongside other rushdown hidden runners. For example, he has a kill setup similar to Sheik's raindrop that involves landing only the first hit of fair, which has a fixed launch distance, followed by an immediately fast falling short hop up air into either up smash or down smash. This is its primary way to close out stocks without Arsene, but the timing is very stringent, probably more so than raindrop, so it's next to impossible to perform this consistently online. One would think that moves with faster frame data have an advantage online since it's more likely for your attacks to come out faster than that of slower hits. And while that's true, once again going back to the power and speed dynamic, you need to get way more hits in over the course of a match, and that means more instances where you can mess up. During the Wi-Fi meta, the archetypes that had a significant advantage were sword fighters, zoners, and mashers. Joker is none of those. Granted, he has disjointed attacks, but they're not disjointed enough to compete with full-on swords like Clouds or Byleths, even Roy's to an extent. Regardless of what your opinion on Wi-Fi Smash Bros is, it's played an integral role in the development of rising talent that we're seeing today. The fighters most popular during the online era carried over into the post-pandemic season because these people have been playing those characters for over a year, so it's not much of a surprise that Leo continued to play Byleth even as in-person tournaments came back. Also, on the subject of Byleth, a lot of people still believe the narrative that Joker is an objectively better pick for Leo and can earn him better results in the long term. That's not necessarily true. While it's not perfect, Ultimate is the game with the most balanced roster in the Smash Bros. Franchise. The gap between the best and worst character is a lot more narrow than in any of its predecessors. In Smash 64, Pikachu was light years better than Luigi or Link. In Melee, Kirby and Bowser would stand no chance against Fox or Marth, not even close. And Brawl? Well, do I even need to explain? Where I'm going with this is that in many scenarios, it's not entirely inconceivable for a high or even mid-tier fighter to go toe-to-toe with the best of the best. In fact, it happens very often. The difference is negligible enough to where skill can make up the difference, thus leaving character selection up to whatever the player feels most in tune with. MKLeo is a distance fighter at heart, always has been. He played Marth and Cloud in most of Smash 4, in Brawl he played Meta Knight and Snake. During the early days of Ultimate, he experimented with Lucina and Ike as well. The guy was always a swordy, so it makes perfect sense for him to stick to Byleth, who isn't as fully capable as Joker, but good enough to where Leo can close the gap through sheer aptitude. That brings us to the first major contributor behind people dropping him. Joker is not a character you can autopilot. There's nothing in his kit that you can default to in the neutral, or heck, any situation for that matter. You have to alternate between a myriad of different playstyles, flowcharts, and fundamentals based on who you're playing against and what kind of playstyle they have. Technically everyone has to do that, but it's even more necessary for him. One could argue that you have access to Iha/Igon and gun to spam at your leisure, but when I say autopilot, I mean like a when in doubt do this type of move. For instance, stuff like Zelda's Phantom or Cloud's back air, Ike's Nair, Rob loading up Gyro, Wolf's Blaster, bread and butters or attacks that are safe enough to spam in the neutral without too much commitment. Joker does have Nair in a few things, but all in all he's very exhausting to play. It may sound silly, but Smash Bros is inherently mentally strenuous. High skill floor characters run the risk of being unrealistically difficult to perform at a high level consistently for long periods of time. Ultimate in particular has a roster so diverse that it's not only handy but on occasion obligatory for you to have a good secondary, since few characters, if any, can take on the game's entire list without difficulty, rendering those like Joker ironically suboptimal choices for mains in light of how demanding they are. I touched on that in the previous episode with Shulk. Certain fighters are so mechanically taxing that you have no choice but to solo main them, for better or worse. Continuing on with the inability to autopilot, mastering Joker requires you to skirt a very fine line between patience and aggression that fluctuates all the time. His base form is very reminiscent of Sheik's, high-speed low and mid-percentage combos through grabs or neutral interactions, but this also means that a lot of his kills hinge on the usage of Arsene. Because of this, it can feel like he has very limited windows of opportunity to close out stocks comfortably. Oftentimes that places a lot of pressure on you to make the most out of each round of Arsene, causing many inexperienced Joker players to lose all sense of caution and recklessly approach their opponent. Conversely though, he doesn't have the luxury to play defensively either, and without Rebel's Guard, he rarely gets a second persona in the same stock. I'm not implying that he's completely useless without Arsene, but Joker is balanced around Arsene. Patch 7.0 featured a nerf that exacerbated the depletion rate of the Rebellion gauge when Joker suffers damage, narrowing the margin for error enough to where losing 1 or 2 neutral interactions shuts down your entire comeback mechanic. Good players know this. They can choose to play extremely passive and wait out your power spike, in which case Joker is very much like Sheik, a fast character with amazing tools but can't kill to save their life, although unlike Sheik, a lot of Joker's power budget is allocated towards Arsene. I'd go so far as to say if we were to take out his persona, Joker is more or less worse than Sheik in every way. So you might be asking, why does this matter in the context of his popularity? It's because Arsene has one very fatal vulnerability. While the persona's strengths far outweigh its flaws, the activation requirement is very counterproductive. Like all comeback mechanics, the idea is that it gives you a chance to get back into the game, and for that to happen, you would have to be losing or at the very least in disadvantage, such as getting comboed or taking a lot of damage. If you can reset to neutral, that's your chance to turn the match back in your favor. Starting to see the issue here? In order for Joker to summon Arsene naturally, he would have to be in a bad spot, but being in a bad spot means you're likely taking damage, and how does the Rebel gauge deplete? By taking damage. Oftentimes Joker calls on his persona while getting comboed, which can lead to him losing a large chunk of his Rebel gauge right out the gate. Additionally, Arsene doesn't give you any passive statistical advantage over your opponent, meaning if you were playing badly before, you'll be playing badly after. It is considered a comeback mechanic, but the onus falls on the player to execute on it. If we're splitting hairs, every comeback mechanic requires you to use it well, but there are key differences that make the others a little bit more consistent. Cloud's Limit, Terry's Go Button, and Kazuya's Rage are all specials with extraordinary kill power. One good read or whiff punish is lights out for the opposing player. Arsene's power spike is evenly distributed across Joker's entire kit, and while those moves grow in strength considerably, none of them pack enough of a punch in one blow. Cloud's limit moves grant him startup intangibility and have impressive range and/or coverage. Terry's Buster Wolf and Power Geyser have super armor while having immense range. Kazuya's Rage Drive, and I guess we can throw in Little Mac's KO Punch too, also have armor while bypassing shields. Sephiroth's One Wing shares a lot of the same properties as Arsene, but even he gets some extra leeway such as a third jump and super armor on smash attacks. To some extent, everyone else's comeback mechanics are bigger and/or condensed into one heavy go big or go home move. Mind you, if we had the choice, most of us would opt for Arsene 9 times out of 10, but the lack of a safety net to fall back on is what hurts Joker's popularity to some extent. That's really what it boils down to. He doesn't have a move or playstyle to default on. Even if he theoretically can rack up more damage with one neutral interaction or smoke his opponents with Arsene, the absence of a fallback is one weakness high-level players cannot afford, especially at the upper echelon of play. The long and short of it is, Joker's a character with very high highs and very low lows. Pro players would rather main someone who has a smaller range of pressure because that makes them consistent. If someone like Byleth can perform between 80 to 120% capacity, Joker's is more like a 50 to 150 range. The latter can achieve greater heights, but he can fall to lower depths just as easily. I remember, there were times back in Leo's Joker days where he would finesse the crap out of his opponent, breaking them to pieces, but there were also moments where he seemed completely lost and couldn't figure out a way in. On Byleth, however, he may not be making top players look like scrubs as often, but he also doesn't get overwhelmed anymore either, which is why I think he prefers Byleth much more. Not just him, but everyone else. Joker is strong, but risky, and to be successful in this game, you have to minimize that risk. So what do you guys think about Joker? Do you agree or disagree with my points, or do you think there's something else entirely that's causing people to drop him? I know I haven't really mentioned the nerfs he got to things like side B and down gun, but I seriously doubt those were the cause behind his gradual decline, at least not entirely. Anyways, we're gonna end it off here, so if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter, joining my Discord server, and checking out my previous Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. But for now, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.